Thank you for clicking in to explore the far-reaching impacts of the choices we make, one conversation at a time. This is the Ripple Effect. Today we're going to go ahead and talk to one of the mayoral candidates for the Palm Coast City. Ripple Effect tries to be as neutral as possible and talk to both sides of the story. We want to be able to get both sides and not be biased to one. But with today, we want to go ahead and sit down with candidate Mike Norris and see how he envisions the city going forward and what his plans are for Make the City Better. With that, we'd like to give Mike Norris the chance to go ahead and give a brief explanation of what his, campaign is about. But really, we just want to get a little bit more information on him before we start into that. So if we can just turn it over to Mike Norris now. Mike, if you can just give us a brief summary of who you are and what qualifies you to be mayor, in your opinion, we would appreciate it.
My family and I, we've been residents here for 18 years. I'm retired military. My wife's retired law enforcement. So our kids, we raised our kids here. We settled here. We had to find a place to settle at the retirement from the military, and my wife found Palm Coast. And the main draw that brought us here, we originally had a contract for a house down in Edgewater. Okay. And the contract fell through. That was during the housing bubble. They said they couldn't build the houses for what they were charging us, so they tried to upsell us on our house. So they dropped that contract. My wife found this house here, our first house here in Palm Coast. So I brought her and the kids here in 2006, and I had to finish up. I didn't retire until 2012 from the military. So we settled in here, and I think that I'm a product of the community, because I retired when I was 43 years old, so in 2012. But I had to keep working somewhere else for my wife and kids to be able to afford to live here, because retirement pay is not that much, and most people don't retire when they're 43 years old. So I continued working until we could get into a position where we could settle down and be full-time residents and work and raise our kids here. And our kids are out of school now, so I felt it was time to give back to the community. The catalyst that made me want to run or push me into running was when the council, which I considered they were conservative because everyone on the city council were Republicans, and they gave themselves that 151% pay raise. And at that point, and all the other stuff that was going on at the time, that was during the 2022 election, and there was a lot of shenanigans going on within the Republican Party and in the county, and it just pushed me over the edge. I'm like, somebody's got to do something. This city needs to provide jobs and fix the infrastructure in this city, and this is not the leadership we need. So I decided to throw my hat in the ring, and I filed my paperwork in February 2023. So technically, I'm probably the longest running candidate in the county. But you have to build up name recognition, because we own two small businesses, but getting out there and being involved in the community so people recognize who you are and what you stand for. And I've been going to the city council meetings for, since I announced, or before I announced, because the first time I ever stood up at a city council was when they gave themselves that 151% pay raise. Okay. And I said, if you guys pass that pay raise, I'm going to do everything I can to get you out of office, because you can't do that to your community. We just come out of COVID, and we were pretty much recessionary period, high inflation, hyperinflation going on, and they chose to do that. And I'm like, you can't call yourself a conservative and do that to your community, and plus all the other things that were going on. So
I just want to ask before he goes on, what is it? I'm interested in the title. What is a anti-terrorism and critical infrastructure protection officer?
That was my job over in Okinawa as a GS-11 employee for the federal government. So I met a friend in graduate school, and he took the job as a camp director over there, and he was Navy. So I was more Army. I didn't do a lot of some joint operations, but not so much. But he took that job over there, and I was just kidding around with him, and I said, hey, you got a job for me? And he knew that I'd fought in Iraq for quite a few years. But he asked me to come over and be his anti-terrorism critical infrastructure. And in that position, I was the director of the Emergency Operations Center. We controlled the installations. We had 3 installations. So
How many people?
A little over 40,000 people. That's civilian employees, military personnel, Japanese nationals, and other nationals that come on the installation. So we controlled access to the installation, all the force protection measures. We had to do all the planning and support operations for everything on the installation, from maintenance, commissary, which is a grocery store, PX, which is like the mall, water utilities, power, stormwater, all that stuff we controlled.
Sounds like running a small town.
That's what it was. We ran the city. So in the military, on installations like that, you have war fighters and then you have civilians. So it's a mirrored operation. So if the war fighters leave, the civilians stay and they control the installation and they keep the functions going. And mainly, you have to be prepared to evacuate all those civilians off that island if something bad happens. If we go to war, all those civilian dependents and all that stuff are not going to stay there. They're all going to have to be evacuated. So we controlled all that. We have 5 major typhoons. They call hurricanes typhoons in that region of the world. So we have 5 major typhoons that hit while I was there. And we did everything from top to bottom, everything. We had a budget for infrastructure. Our annual budget for infrastructure projects alone, not the personnel and equipment, all that stuff, just infrastructure projects working with contractors was between 125 and 135 a year. That's just in infrastructure.
That's in the millions, of course.
Yes, millions, yes.
I did want to go back to the 150% raise. I do want to kind of like ask you this question. You are a business person. Do you think that paying somebody a low wage is actually going to get the best people to come for that job?
No, well, if you think, just look at this election cycle. Their main reason for offering or raising their salary like that was to draw in better candidates for all these positions.
Okay.
Have you noticed an increase in the quality of candidates that are running for office?
Mm-hmm.
You got retreads from before. You got people that are inside the powers that be and collaborating with all these people and developers and stuff like that. So it doesn't seem like it changed anything. And I may be the oddball because I do think I'm the most educated and, as far as leadership, the most qualified candidate running for city council. And a lot of these other candidates have followed my lead, my platform. I gave you a copy of my platform.
Right.
It seems like every candidate out there is talking my platform, and they're probably reading my platform and studying it. And I've been very, very open with some of the things I disagree with. Say, for instance, the referendum that's coming up. Mm-hmm. I think I was the only person in the city that stood up on 2 July when they first proposed it. They came up with the initial language and said, hey, you shouldn't do this. And now you got politicians out there that crafted the language, that passed it, put it on a referendum, put it on the ballot, and I told them not to do it way back in July. Here we are. We got a lawsuit now against the city and the supervisor election that could have been avoided if they did the right thing starting back in July. And, that's just, I'm pretty open on
it. Could
have
have just been avoided last week when they voted on it.
They could have rescinded it.
Right.
It was a 2-2 vote. Ms. Hyder is no longer on the city council. They could have rescinded it, drew it back, and recrafted it. Everybody, I shot a video on 23 July out in front of City Hall, and it was hot that day, but I had my jacket and tie on. But I said, look, this is what's going on. But even on, and I just sent a video over to Chase. We never published it. After that 2 July meeting, I came home and I sat in my den and I shot a video, and I looked at it last night, and I'll send it to you guys. You can take a look at it. But I laid it out for everybody what they were doing. This is what they're doing. and then for them to turn around and finally admit that it was for that sports facility on the west side.
93 million one.
Yes, and I've been saying that since July. I'm like, okay, how much further ahead do I have to lean for these people to start understanding the message and what's going on?
What was strange about that? It kind of came out in that meeting last week, the last council meeting, is that Danko and Partieri put a lot of time into that, the language, and then Danko came out and said, I don't agree with this, and he phrased it as, he said that, yes, I went back on it, but it had something to do with Rayonier. I don't understand that aspect of it. What does Rayonier have to do with this thing?
Those are the people that own the property on the west side.
Yes.
And from what they've admitted, that they had meetings with Rainier. And I did a FOIA request to the city, and I said, I want to know exactly who was in those meetings. I want to know exactly what staff were in the meetings, and I want a copy of the meetings, the meeting minutes. Well, the city clerk came back, city manager came back. Well, I think it was just the clerk came back and said, Mr. Norris, we don't have any records of any staff being involved in those meetings. And I know full well if they were having meetings at that law firm that somebody from the staff was there.
Somebody from the council.
And at least one person from the council, Danko admitted that he was there. And I would like him to explain what was in that meeting. Who did he meet with? Who was there? Who took minutes? Most law firms have someone taking minutes, right, when they have a meeting with someone.
So this language was drafted a while back.
It started on 2 July.
Right, and both of them crafted it, Danko and...
They had the initial language,
mm-hmm.
and then it came back around the 16th, and him and Pontieri, they wordsmithed the language,
mm-hmm.
but it really never changed. And they went as far, and this is the thing that got me the most, was when they were initially talking about doing that, David Alphen and Danko were going back and forth about needing the money for emergencies. And it was comical because Alphen went as far as to say, well, what if we have a Cat 5 hurricane hit and we have storm surge that goes to the west of I-95? Think about that statement. I was in emergency management on an island in the middle of the ocean. If you have storm surge that goes 3.5 miles inland, that's about the distance between Flagler Beach and I-95, right? That's not a hurricane. That's called a tsunami. And I'm like, I can't believe this man is saying this to justify taking away the cap on spending of the city, borrowing power of the city. And I'm like, he knows nothing about emergency management, and it's all a smoke screen to get what they want. And the thing about it, I already knew what they wanted it for, and I was already calling them out on it. And then for Danko to flip and say, well, I didn't understand it. Well, you crafted the language, sir.
That's what I don't understand. Something must have changed in that meeing with Rayonier that made him change his mind. Am I wrong on that?
Well, quite personally, and this is just speculation, but I think Mr. Danko is out of the money. Meaning he's not going to get anything. He is irrelevant to the developers now because he's not going to be able to effectuate any change at any level of government because he is not sitting in a position anymore. And they probably didn't give him enough money for his campaign, and maybe he felt like he was shortchanged. But that's the good old boy system here in this county that I'm trying to get rid of. And I don't like it. I think there's a lot of grift in the community. I think there's a lot of backdoor deals. There was one instance where out here at the end of Matanzas, there's a piece of property out there, and they needed it for something. And I don't know all the specifics, but Douglas Property had a first right of refusal on that property, and they did some type of handshake deal between the city staff and Douglas about that property. And then Douglas turned around and said, no, we're not giving up our first right of refusal. So the city got a $20,000 legal fee for dealing with that situation and transfer that property over to get what they needed. So that was a handshake deal done between the staff and a developer that cost the city at a minimum $20,000 in legal fees. So who's being held accountable for those legal fees? They didn't mention anything about it.
Well, that begs the question: what are the legal fees going to be for fighting this Lowell lawsuit?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's what I'm saying. It's going to be defeated.
Which is going to be defeated?
The referendum is going to be defeated.
Okay.
Everybody, I'm hoping that everybody in this city understands that it's the wrong thing to do. You shouldn't take away your limits on the government. And I've been campaigning against it. I'm going to put as many videos out as I can to say, hey, don't vote for this. It's the wrong. We can fix it. We do need to fix it. We do need to increase the limit. And I even suggested on 2 July and on 16 July, when they actually passed it, I suggested upping it to $60 million, and including the language for public-private partnerships. It's easy to do. All you had to do was change the amount and put a clause in there about doing public-private partnerships.
Yep.
And that's all they had to do. It was pretty simple. It's like, I was giving somebody the example last night. It's like just taking whichever one you want to go with. It's either the First Amendment or Second Amendment. Just stripping it from the Constitution. Okay, to strip away your right to free speech. Just take it away. So they're taking away limitations on the government, which is wrong, and it's going to be defeated. But it's going to cost us money now.
It's going to get on the ballot, though.
It's already on the ballot, as far as I know. It's not going to be pulled back. Now, the judge, well, I don't know what. I tried to call Miss Linhart yesterday. She was out of the office, to ask her where it was at with the judge. What is the judge saying? What is he going to do? Try to figure out what's going to go on. Either it's going to be defeated on the ballot, hopefully. You never can tell. And the judge will make the decision to render it null and void or let it go. But I'm hoping that it'll be defeated on the ballot.
Okay, then you don't need to do anything.
No, just plain out the citizens are going to say no.
Now, you said that you would agree upping it to $60 million.
Yes.
So you're in agreement that $15 million is a bit less. It kind of ties the hands of the city council.
Well, right now, really, because we have like 21, 22 funds, separate funds within the city, the enterprise funds that pay for all this stuff. But besides the ad valorem tax, our city budget is $421 million this year. 61 million of that is from ad valorem tax, and
which is the general fund.
Yes, which is the general fund, and 93% of that ad valorem tax comes from us, the homeowner. That's where it comes from. It's from us. But those enterprise funds, we're in debt now. The city is in debt through those enterprise funds for other infrastructure and stuff that we've been doing throughout the city. So it's not like we can't borrow the money to fix infrastructure on those enterprise funds. They specifically did that so they could do that public-private partnership to build that sports facility. And $15 million, when that was crafted back in the day, it probably equates to $29-30 million right now. So I would say up it to at least $30 million, and you can add a buffer. I say double it to 60 because the city's going to continue to grow, and you do need to have that flexibility. But it was just a shady deal, and we need to fix it.
So can't they also need to put other limitations on that, what that could be used for? I mean, if we do up it to 60 million, we need to have a limitation on infrastructure, emergencies, and certain other things that they can be used for, because otherwise we're going to see more of this possible deals being made to, bring other things in here.
Yeah, it needs to be pretty specific, and if it's something big, the voice of the people should be heard on it.
You know what? Partieri said, Councilwoman Partieri said in that meeting that even if they got rid of the 15 million cap through the amendment, there are other guardrails that keep the council with just spending anything. And I haven't heard anything about that. Is that actually true?
Well, she didn't get very specific on it, but I'm sure there's statutes within the state law that limits a little bit, and that would be the guardrails. You can only yeah, I don't know all the specifics. She's a lawyer, so I would hope she knows a little bit more about that. And she's in real estate as far as I know,
Okay.
so she might know a little bit more about that. But you can't just.
So it could be that if you remove the $15 million cap, then there could be a $20-30 million cap with respect to guardrails that are out there that we just don't know about because we're not attorneys.
Yes, and spending limits within the enterprise funds. There's a lot of moving components in government, and that's one of the issues as far as having the qualified staff, qualified attorney, because this whole thing that went down with the Miss Hyder resignation, I was a bit taken aback by that too, because I felt they should have put it on the ballot. So now you're going to have someone sitting on the council for 2 years that was selected, not elected.
They did say that was because of the time limitations, though. I heard.
Well, the way to get over that hurdle would have been to say you pay the fee. You pay the fee, get your name on the ballot, and go.
There wasn't enough time to qualify them.
If they paid the fee, there was. And really, Miss Linhart, that her staff is those ladies and gentlemen over there are so good as far as petitions. And I even made the analogy of like we walk the neighborhoods over here. I live in the L section. We walk the neighborhood over here 4 hours in the afternoon, like on a Friday afternoon, and we got 90 petitions in less than 4 hours. So if you're very popular within the city and in your district, because that's a district seat, so the petitions have to come from your district. You could set up your pickup truck at Lowe's and say, "Hey guys, come out. I need these petitions signed. Get all your friends to come out and sign petitions. I need between 130 and 150 petitions." Those people I know they're busy right now because it's election season, but those ladies and gentlemen over at the supervisor of elections, they are very fast about turnover on those petitions. I would turn them in on one day. The next day I'd get the numbers back that were good and bad, and I could go forward. I knew my exact count of where I was at. So at a minimum, they should have let the person pay the fee. And we don't want the seat bought. Well, you don't know if the seat's going to be bought the way it's going to be handled now. You got 3 people that are lame duck and forensic audits and stuff like that. They don't catch backdoor deals. They don't catch under. Well,
my understanding is that actually 11 people applied.
Yes.
2 didn't show up.
I think 12 applied, 11 showed up. I may be wrong, but go ahead.
Okay, so actually 9. I thought it doesn't really count. Let's say it was 9 that showed up.
There's a lot of people that applied for the position. Yes.
And so why didn't they allow it to go to the election? I don't understand that. Okay, moving on. So you would say the same thing about Sally Hunt. You would rather have that be now. It's not comparing apples and apples. She's a school board member, but she just resigned. Are they going to appoint somebody for her?
The governor will appoint that position.
Okay.
The governor will appoint it.
You brought up the fact that the taxes that are collected, mostly residential, and you have a plan that's going to go ahead and work towards bringing in more commercial. I'm wondering what kind of plans you have, what incentives you're looking to try to draw in, and whether you're going to have a team that works on that while you're in office.
Well, the team is going to be the staff of the city, but we have to get away. I mentioned this at the forum the other night. Not one penny of the city budget, as far as and when I say things, I have to say in my opinion or what I think, because you're working with 4 other people, and the mayor is only one vote. But the mayor is the head of state for the city, meaning he's the governing person. When the governor comes down, he's typically going to come see the mayor. He's not coming to see the city manager. So you are the head of the government for the city. So you have to work with the staff to do that. But one of my things is we're not going to spend any more money advertising Palm Coast as a residential city. We're not doing it, and we are not, as far people keep saying it and they believe it. Palm Coast is not a retirement community. Only a third of our population is 55 and older. The other there's a reason we have schools. there's people are raising their families here. Over 50% of our workforce, our eligible workforce in the city, leaves the city and the county every morning to go work somewhere else, because there's not enough jobs and industry here for people to stay local. say like my kids are two great kids. And I heard this one got me. I read on Flagel Live, someone said, the people here are not educated enough. Well, you're full of it, because my oldest son, he got a degree in aerospace engineering. He came from Flagler schools. He got a degree in aerospace engineering down at Emory-Riddle, presidential scholarship, Navy ROTC. He made like in his pocket like $7,000 a semester to go to school. This kid wants to be an astronaut. He got selected to become a naval submarine officer, so he had to go through all that training. So, and my younger son, Sean, he's studying mathematics. He scored like 1540 on his SATs here in this county. In that year, I don't think another kid in this county scored that high on their SATs. He's studying mathematics. Those kids, there are not jobs here for kids like that. But for people to say our population, our young kids are not educated enough to do those high skill jobs, they're full of it, because they are. That we have bright kids in our community that need a place to work.
Right now, the major industry in Palm Coast, let's face it, is tourism. And then the largest private employer is Advent Health. They employ about 1,500 people. And after that is Publix. So, and then on the private side, it's the school board with like another 1,900 people. What industries would you like to see, or would you attract as mayor, or try to get to come to Palm Coast?
Well, I'd have to correct you a little bit there. The largest employer in the county, in the city, is the government.
How many people? At
all levels of government. Well, right now we have over 630 employees at the city, but you got to include the county, you got to include the schools, because the schools are government. The next highest employer will be the hospitals, which you're right, and then you would probably fall down on house building, and a lot of people that build houses don't even live in this county because they can't afford to live here. So they have to come in to work to build houses. So for me, we are in a prime location between Jacksonville and the Cape. Space Force is moving to the Cape. Space Force Command is going to be at the Cape. And even back in the day, this whole east side of Florida, the Cape on up, even south, was dedicated to the space industry. And now it's coming online. If you think about it, SpaceX puts up a rocket, every other day down on the Cape, putting up Starlink satellites. We had to press forward, and we have a new economic development guy in the city that they just hired, and I think they're trying to hire him an assistant. So that's a lot of money going into economic development. So we have to draw on those organizations that are going to build those components for the space industry and whatever else we can get in here. And people talk about manufacturing, and older people think about, the smokestacks of the 60s and 70s. Well, that's not the way things are done anymore. Mm-hmm. We're clean manufacturing. You got OSHA, you got EPA, you have all these regulations, but it's a nonpartisan issue. Democrat president, Republican president, they're all talking about onshoring jobs, bringing jobs back to America. And we're in a prime location, but we don't have the land for it. That's our big thing here. Less than 3% of our land within the city boundaries is zoned for industrial. And that is out on Hargrove Grade, out in that area. That's it. We can't let them expand and extend our city boundaries without dedicating those lands to be used for industrial growth. Because we misuse US 1 out here. At the end of Matanzas Woods Parkway, back in the day, that sign out there that says sawmill, that used to say industrial park coming soon. So they misused that property, and they let them upzone it to residential, and they made a very bad mistake by doing that. And now they're trying to push us even further west and build more houses. And not only that, they're redoing the comprehensive plan. They've redone the comprehensive plan, which we're going to fix that, so they can redo the land development code to allow them to do what they want on the west side. They have a new land designation code that they have in that comprehensive plan, which they will transition over to the land development code, that allows single family homes with additional dwellings.
What's that mean?
that means you can have a little house with your house.
Like a tiny
Like
house or something?
a mother-in-law, mother-in-law or in-law suite. But do we really need that here in Palm Coast? Is that the problem? We don't have big enough houses that we want extra houses. And what it's going to be is there's going to be the McMansions, estates, you know, and they're talking about high-end housing. So they have their plans for out west. And if we don't...
And when you say they, who are they?
They are the developers and the lawyers and all the powers that be. And, you know, Alvin bragged...
Do you throw Rainier in there?
They're the property owner and they're developers. But Alvin bragged 2 years ago that he was going to double the size of Palm Coast in a Daytona News Journal article. Okay, so you're going to double the size, you know, as far as housing, but what about jobs and industries?
What about infrastructure?
And infrastructure.
Actually, I was listening to a podcast, and I'm not going to say the name because I don't want to advertise another podcast. And they posed a question to a Ray Stevens, who's running for the 3rd District right now. And they said, do you think that the infrastructure is keeping pace with the population growth? I'm not going to give his answer, but what do you think of that?
It's not. I told him at the forum the other day, we got robbed during the last 2 legislative sessions. The year before last, they got $25.5 million for out west. This legislative session alone, this one, we asked for $35 million for Water Treatment Plant 1. Didn't get it. We asked for $42 million for Old Kings Road, north and south. We didn't get it. We asked for $6 million for a YMCA that wasn't even going to include a swimming pool. We didn't get it. But we got $79.8 million for that road out west. So over the past
The loop road.
The loop road. So over the last 2 legislative sessions, we got $105 million for that road out west. And we got virtually, in this last session, we got virtually nothing for our infrastructure.
So that loop road is running right through Rainier property right now.
It's going to loop out from Matanzas Woods, and it's going to come around to Palm Coast Parkway.
Okay. The only thing I can think of that being built for, because it's in the middle of nowhere right now, when it finishes, is it's going to serve that westward expansion. That's how I look at it.
That's what it's for. And
but we have 2,000 right now. We have 2,000 homes. If you go out down the MLS in Palm Coast that are sitting there unsold, but somehow in that expansion area is keyed for, now don't quote me on this, anywhere between 5 and 10,000 new homes. We can't sell what we have here already.
We have the last number I got, we have approximately 16,000 houses in the queue to be built. And
where?
That's within the city proper right now.
So these are pre-approved already.
This is all the developments they've been doing over the past 2 years, because after a while you lose track of it because there's so many. Every time somebody brings something up to the city council, it gets approved. You know, it's like, when are you going to slow it down? When are you going to say, hey, no, you know, we can't. We have swaths of the city that don't have water now. And this has been admitted to by staff. I had one lady on the staff tell me, like, Mike, there's parts of the city we don't have water for. So we need to slow down the development and focus on our infrastructure and get it straight. And there was a meeting a few weeks ago. This is during the time when they first brought up the referendum thing. The mayor and Mr. Coates, I think it was, they were having a discussion. And Mr. Coates tells him flat out, the impact fees have not kept up to pay for the fire station. The fire station's being built. Mm-hmm. If you're not charging the developers what you should be to shore up the infrastructure, you know, that's what it's supposed to be for. It's supposed to be for bringing on, and impact fees are strictly for new stuff, not existing stuff.
It's a one-time fee.
Yeah, well, it's you know, to bring stuff on, new stuff online, not existing stuff. Like impact fees can't go to pay for salaries. They can't go to pay for salary. It's just like more like physical assets, building up physical assets, putting in sewer lines or electrical lines, roads, stuff like that, not shoring up existing stuff. So if we're not charging the people the money that they should be charged, and at one time they were given impact fee credits. We've had people stand up at city council and say, you were giving developers impact fee credits. That means you're not charging them the fees that you should be. A credit can be in several forms, but if you're not charging them, say, okay, just go ahead and put in those new lines. We'll take care of it for you. No. You have to charge them, and you have to keep up the infrastructure, and you have to get those assets, those funds from the state or through grants and stuff. But the biggest deal on the last two legislative sessions is we had the Speaker of the House. The Speaker of the House was from our county, and special interest won over. When you get, we got more money for that road out west than the whole county got. Not just our city, the whole county. So those other municipalities, the county government they should be upset that the leadership has failed us. Plain and simple. The county had asked for $29 million from the legislature for beach renourishment. I don't know if you guys knew that in this last legislative session. They asked for $29 million. They didn't get any of that money. But then they're talking about proposing a beach tax. Did you know about that?
Nope.
No, I haven't heard
And
that.
the closer you live to the beach, the more you would be taxed. So that's the kind of things we're dealing with when you don't get that money from the state in those appropriations, which I told them at the forum the other day, we got robbed. And if you don't know that, you might want to catch up.
And it was the $105 million for the road is what you were speaking of.
They got $25.5 million, the last one. Mm-hmm. And then in this one, they got $79.8 million. And that is not completely funded. Now, the thing that Ms. Pontieri brought up a couple of weeks ago was, and this is why they're trying to change the comprehensive plan, because in the old comprehensive plan, all those DRI, those direct regional impact things.
Oh, yeah.
It was already written into there that the developers were going to be paying for that.
Oh, she stood up and said, this is unbelievable.
Yeah, and I used her clip in one of my shorts, and she said they were supposed to build that sports facility with a junior-sized Olympic swimming pool. So basically, changing the comprehensive plan and changing the land development code, we're letting the developers off the hook on things that they had committed to in the past, which the new council is not going to allow that. What I would hope, when you vote for people, that would be a question you need to ask them. What are you going to do about the comprehensive plan, the land development code, of them trying to hustle us and take that commitment away from the developers and put it on us?
And this comprehensive plan, somewhere back in like a decade ago?
No, they just redid that.
No. They originally came up.
Yeah.
They put it together like over a decade ago, correct?
Yes.
And in that, just so I understand it, what she was speaking to is that in that comprehensive plan developed, let's say in 2009 or 2010, in there was that they were going to build that $93 million proposed sports complex, right?
Well, I don't know if it would have been that exact dollar amount.
Okay,
but they
that's
were
what it was.
supposed to do the facility, because in impact, when they're negotiating with the city for bringing in stuff, they set aside green space. They try to maneuver to have them do certain things, like put in a park for us.
Mm-hmm.
Something for the community.
Was the road in there?
That was in the old DRI, yes.
So in the old DRI, you had the road, you had the complex, whatever dollar value was in there.
Yeah.
And what about any type of utilities?
Well, I'm sure. No. As far as infrastructure, they were supposed to pay that too.
And now it's all being passed on to the taxpayers.
Yes.
And that's what she was speaking of.
Yes.
Aren't they also passing on some of these impact fees to the actual residents or buyers of houses?
Yeah, well, see, that's what they say. And the real estate industry and people that are the home builders and stuff like that are like, well, we're the homeowner, the home buyer is going to have to pay that. Well, yes. But if those houses sit vacant, when you reduce the price of the home because you can't get it off the market, who absorbs that cost? Say we built your house for, say, $200,000. You're
Not
not
likely.
getting a house for $200,000 in Palm Coast. But
$450.
But just say $25,000 of that was for impact fees. Okay, so you're paying that $200,000. So, well, if they can't sell the house for $200,000 and they have to drop it to $175,000 to sell the house to get it off their books to move the inventory, who's absorbing that $25,000? It's not the home buyer. It's going to be the developer, because you're having to cut that money. So you're going to have to suck it up. You're sucking up that loss.
But we talked to a developer or somebody that's actually selling those houses, and they said in addition to the tax that they're paying on the property, they're also paying an additional cost for those impact fees over 7 years a lot of times. So they're going to pay their property tax and an additional cost that's going to be, prorated for 7 years a lot of the times to pay that $21,000, $25,000.
I don't know about that.
I'll have to go back to that, but that's what he was basically
If you could send it
saying.
to me, I'd like to see it, hear the discussion, so I would know exactly what they're talking about.
Yeah, so what he's saying is basically when they come to the actual closing, they see that there's an additional cost. And this is a cost that's put against.
Oh, so you're saying they're tacking it on to their contract.
Yeah.
So they're trying to make the home buyer suck it up anyway. Well, it all, somebody's going to pay it. If you want to live here, you're going to pay. You're going to have to pay.
One thing I wanted to just jump back to, not to get off the subject, is incentives for businesses to come here.
Oh, we had talked about that, but listen, I don't, you have to talk to the staff, and you have to work out things, but there's not very much you should be doing, other than bringing it, say, we have a home for you, we'll work with you to try to get you into this property or whatever. But if you bend over backwards for industry, then your city's going to get robbed.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just say, well, he's going to bring in 100 jobs. Let's give him $10,000 in tax incentives, really, or more, $2 million, whatever number you put on it. How much incentive do you have to give them?
What if it's not a monetary incentive? What if it's like streamlining documents or streamlining?
Yeah, and I think we should work with
permitting
people to do that. Yeah, that's fine. But my opponent
or impact fee reductions. Do you think?
No. If you do impact fees, you're still the burden's going to fall on us. So you have to charge those impact fees. Now, there's the thing that we've talked about: enterprise zones. Okay, you're going to build this building. We're gonna charge you. Your taxes are going to be based on the building itself, not the improvements inside and all the stuff you do, all the the amenities and stuff, just for the building for a certain amount of time. And now that seems reasonable. You're just being taxed on the shell of a building, and all the stuff you do inside. That's up to you for a certain amount of time, and that's okay. That's basically an enterprise zone. You're lowering their tax burden for a while to get them to move in there and build their business. That's fine. But I don't believe in bending over backwards. That in that shell of a building, you still have to pay those impact fees for the roads, the sewers, the electricity, all that stuff.
For this new BJ's just opened up on the 20th, I believe. And then I think there's going to be like a ale house and a steak house over there in another bank.
Yeah.
Did they get any type of incentives?
Well, I know BJ's, they just annexed into the city, and I did not watch that meeting. I admit I didn't watch that meeting. I had other things going on. But BJ's built that. They built all that, and then they annexed into the city. So maybe the impact fees were less with the county, and then they just annexed in. And now I don't know all the specifics. I'm truly honest. I don't know all the specifics on the deal to get them to annex into the city. Mm-hmm. I need to go back and watch that city council meeting and get a little bit more data on that one. But I'm sure there's a reason they did it like that, and I think the cost was less for them to get it up and running, just going through the county. And I don't know about as far as how cumbersome it was for them. Maybe it was a little bit easier. Maybe the requirements for the county were a little bit more lax than the city. I don't know. I really do have to research that one.
Right, I got it.
Cool. I did want to ask you a question. You were talking about bringing commercial here and so forth. One thing we kind of see with high-tech jobs and other jobs is they like to have an educated force. Like someone else said, we're not educated enough. Is there any opportunities for us to bring like education training programs or something to Palm Coast that might bring in more industry?
I think the schools should be pushing for that. They should be pushing more of a vocational, well, not necessarily all, but a higher percentage of vocational skills, HVAC, plumbing, all that stuff, electrical. Back when I grew up, I'll be 55 in October. Back when I grew up, we had a vocational school. We had kids that would go to Votech like twice a week, and they had to drive like 10 miles away to go to school. But they were learning those skills, and like framing, like framing buildings, concrete, anything that helps the community and helps these kids get jobs coming out, because not all kids are going to go to college. The economics of it doesn't work out, and some people just aren't interested in it. But you have kids now. If I had a kid if one of my kids were not pursuing what they're pursuing, I'd say, hey, become a linesman. You know how much money a linesman makes without any debt for university coming out, because all these student loans and stuff. I'd say, hey, go get an apprenticeship, become a linesman. Those guys make great money. So if we can add those skills to the schools, that's great. Now the schools aren't part of the city. That's separate. It's a separate taxing authority. But we need that. But I'll challenge anybody that says our kids aren't educated here, because the schools are kind of gone down a little bit. But my kid's got an excellent education here.
Yeah, I'm not saying the schools are not good here.
Yeah.
All my kids have been through the school. Most everybody in my family has a bachelor's degree or above, and a lot of them have gone to school here and completed their associates while in high school even. So, and I know when I've taken them to actual graduation, a greater proportion of the graduating associate's degree is from high school area.
Yeah.
So I think that the schools here are excellent. They were a little bit better when I got here before, but I think that's because of the influx.
Yeah.
From what I hear, there's been a big influx, and people come from other areas, we'll say, are not up to the same level of education as they are here. So it has decreased the numbers in some ways.
Yeah.
So I think that I agree with you on that.
Well, we lost, I think they're paying out like $8 million a year from the schools to homeschool private schools. And it's hurting the public schools because they don't have that money coming in. But and I got in an argument with someone online about this. If you gave me $8,000 a year and I could get my kid a better education on my own, if I had to kick in a little bit more money, but the school system is giving me $8,000 up front to help educate my kid, I'm going to get my kid the best education as possible. If that's homeschool, private school, I would never homeschool someone. That's just not my thing. But I think kids need to be in that public school setting. I think it's great for them. That's where you learn how to be an adult and
social skills.
Yeah, take criticism and just interacting with people. Nowadays, everybody's on their phone. If you try to call someone, they won't answer the phone. They'll text me. I don't want to talk to you. And it takes you 17 minutes to get your point across when you could have done it in 3 minutes in a phone call.
Yeah, the level of anxiety and the inability to communicate and so forth has gone down quite a bit.
Well,
anxiety's gone up. But
COVID hurt us a little bit. My Sean, we had to pull him out of school, and he lost his cookies in the office because he didn't want to leave school. We had to pull him out because we had COVID. And he was mad. He had that was his freshman year. He had 3 times he was out of school because of COVID. And, that just, for his socialization, it wasn't good. COVID brought our family closer together because we were all home together. But as far as that social interaction with other people, it was terrible.
Mm-hmm. Can we jump on to public safety before we run out of time?
Yeah, go ahead.
I had a quick question for you on that public safety one. Right currently now we have, I think it's 57 deputies. You can, if I'm wrong, let me know. And then I think we picked up 9 more in the next budget. coming. And then I read there was a study from the University of North Florida said that we had a deficit of 36. 37. Okay. And then Sheriff Staley said that he was going to do 12 every, this year, 25, 26, 27. Do you think we have a deficit per our population?
The more people coming in, the more policing you need. I just had a meeting with Sheriff Staley last week, and we talked about it. And his budget right now, I think, is a little over $9 million. I think it's $9 million, and it's going to keep going up because you have to have that policing presence, and that's a large draw on our budget is policing, and they are talking. That's another thing they're talking about was the half-cent sales tax increase. The county has floated that too, and when they first floated it, this is the thing. This is the complexities of government. When they first floated it, the prospect of the half-cent sales tax, the city council was talking, and I don't want to say specifically which one. You can probably figure it out. They were talking about taking that money and using it for roads. And just think about which council member has been more concerned with roads. It's kind of easy to figure out. So taking our portion of the sales tax to do the roads. Well, now this whole thing came up with us needing 37 deputies over the next 3 years. And now the county's talking about using it for public safety as far as paying for the deputies. And I am a small government common sense conservative. That's what I consider myself. And I don't want anyone's taxes to go up. And the only reason I would entertain the half-cent sales tax increase is because necessities, groceries specifically, are not taxed. So it's not hurting the consumer as much when the grocery store is pulling all your disposable income. The majority of it is probably going to feed your family. So you're not paying that half cents at the grocery store or necessities, and you can go through the list of all the things that are exempt from sales tax. So, but that's the way things shift. At one time it's okay, we need the money for our roads. Now we need money for the sheriffs and, this deficit on deputies and stuff. So that's the things we're dealing with, and how money's moved and resources are allocated. But we're going to fund the sheriff. That's just something we're like the second safest city in Florida from their study. And Sheriff Staley does a wonderful job of policing our community. And we even had a discussion about, well, I won't even get into it because somebody will start a rumor. But Sheriff Staley's going to do his thing, and his budget will be over $10 million next year. I can almost guarantee it'll be over $10 million.
Right. And which is cheaper than having our own dedicated police force.
Yes, it would be a huge.
It's our projection of $25 million for that one.
I would say more around 40. But that is a heavy lift for our city. And my wife is retired law enforcement. She was a detective down in South Florida. And down in South Florida, a lot of the cities are contract cities. We are a contract city. So we go to the sheriff and say, this is what we need. He says, this is what we offer. We go through that negotiation every year because he has his budget that he needs to safely and effectively enforce laws and all that stuff in our city. And we pay him. He pays his deputies. So there is nothing wrong with being a contract city. That's the thing about sheriffs, having sheriff's office. Sheriffs are independently elected, and they have a job to do, and their jobs are on the line too. If say crime goes up by 50% in our city, Sheriff Staley is probably not going to be reelected, but he's gonna use his resource. And they just had this big argument about them cutting like $650,000 from their budget. They found that they consolidated and they realigned some of their positions. Well, he was able to do that and shift the money to other things because health insurance and stuff like that is costing him more for his staff, and he wants to take care of his staff because you have to be competitive. say for our fire service here or our sheriff's department, if they train those people and put them through that course, that's someone's talk about time, money cost. That's a lot of time and money wasted on educating someone, getting them certified to be a deputy sheriff or a firefighter, for them to go work in St. Johns County or Duval County because the pay is higher, and they only have to drive an hour away to get to work.
Speaking of finding that $650,000,
Yeah.
do you agree with Councilman Danko on finding $2 million for the rollback?
No, he wanted to cut into the reserves just to give a rollback of a very fragment of the budget, and he's lame duck, and he was voted out for a reason. Well, he wasn't voted forward for a reason, so I don't see pulling $2 million from our $20 million contingent, our reserves, just for $1 or $2 on our annual millage rate. I don't think we need to do it. We do need to restructure our city government, and all the departments this past cycle increased, a lot of them over 20% in their budget. And there was a lot of, they got a lot of new positions coming online. Since 2020, our city government has increased by like 25%. In 2020, we have 500 employees. Now we have 630 with seasonal hires, probably a little bit more than that. We need to realign our city staff and be more efficient. That 25% growth is higher than the rate of growth for the city. The city's growth rate has been like 18%. So our city government has grown by 25% over the last 4 years. Mm-hmm. We need to restructure that. And I think my background, I have one of my master's degrees is in human resources management. I've actually managed over 300 employees as an administrator, HR person, up in Jacksonville, and we were dispersed over 58,000 square miles. So imagine trying to do that, all the hiring and firing and, in processing, out processing all those people, taking care of their needs, all their benefit packages and stuff like that. So the federal government's a little bit different than local, but we do need to be restructured, and we have to be efficient with the resources we have. And another thing I'll mention, and you can check it, that amendment going on the ballot where they're going to cut the homestead exemption down to 2%, taxing only 2%. Well, right now it's 3%. Well, guess what happens? We lose a third of our tax revenue if that amendment passes, which it will if it's still on there, because you're going to vote to lower your taxes, right? Mm-hmm. You're going to vote to lower your taxes. You're shaking your head. No, yeah, you're going to vote. If you can
I'll talk to you offline why I don't need to.
If you go, oh, I know why. If it's 3% and it goes down to 2%, guess what? That's a third of the ad valorem tax we're going to lose. Mm-hmm. So we have to make that up somewhere else, right? We have to cut staff. We'll have to cut staff, or we'll have to cut back on capital improvement projects. But there's a lot of moving parts. So this is a very big election.
Did it surprise you when they said that the increase in the budget was 18%?
No, it did not. Because a lot of that is fire, I think fire and the sheriff's department, mm-hmm. and medical. Those are the two biggest draws on our budget, is staff, salaries, and benefit package. That's where all your money, the majority of your money is spent in those two things. So you have to effectively manage your staff and make cuts where you can and provide efficient, effective service for the residents of the city.
So with you bringing that up, efficient and effective service, I do know an older couple actually, who recently had a very high water bill for a couple months. And they asked me some questions because they just recently moved here, and I looked at it. Their bill was over $400 a month. Mm-hmm. They were having in excess of 10,000, 12,000 gallons of usage every day with two people. And I was like, this is impossible. I don't even understand why the city didn't reach out to you and say, got to be something wrong with this.
Yeah.
So why does the city take 3 months to notice this massive increase in usage from one resident? I'm not saying it's just one resident, it could be multiple. This is a resource that we've already identified that we are basically almost at capacity at. And who has managed this? As a mayor, is there anything you can put in place or any way you can talk to the people or have them check this? I think with technology, we should be able to identify some of these abnormalities that are happening.
Well, Bruce Stone, I don't know if you watch a lot of the city council meetings, but Bruce Stone is always standing up at city council. He lived over off of Cimarron Drive, and his biggest issue over there was the traffic. Those people coming out of the sanctuary, that's like a launching pad for them coming down that road. And it's got that one big curve, and he's right on the curb. But his water bill was crazy expensive too. And it came down to the house a little bit older, but the leaks happen in houses, even on slabs. And if you're losing that water through leaks, and it wound up, he had some medical issues because there was leaks in the house and there was mold in the house. So, and he was a renter, and the property owner wouldn't take care of it. There's no way that a 70-year-old man and his wife are using, say, 30,000 gallons of water when they only take a shower once a day, you know. So that water was escaping. I think the city came out and said, well, we don't have a leak, you know, from here to here. You got to examine from the water meter to the house and find out if you have a leak inside. So those, and also a lot of people don't understand if they're using the irrigation system, if they're using city water, you know, that might be a question for those folks. Are you using city water for your irrigation system? Do you have an irrigation system, or is the house older? Could there possibly be leaks? There, you know, you got to do an analysis of it and figure it out.
No, it was a new house. We did identify the issue, but I'm just saying, in reference to the efficiency of resources that the city manages, which is water, one is them.
They should
be able to identify
they should
this.
work to identify that if something's you know, out of the ordinary,
grossly out of normal.
Grossly. Say they do that with like grow houses for marijuana, right? If, say you guys are growing pot in here, and your light bill is like $1,200 a month. Well, why is their light bill $1,200 a month?
Why, can you smell it? Yeah. Before we run too long, I want to ask you about the PR department budget cuts by Councilman Denko.
Say again?
The PR department budget cuts by Councilman Denko.
I think, and I was thinking about this last night. I may have been thinking about it this morning too. When I was up in Jacksonville, we had 308 employees. That's military and civilian employees. And I don't know if you guys know this, but recruiting is all digital. Everything's on your computer. Everything. So we had recruiters spread out 58,000 square miles, Tallahassee up to Albany, Georgia, all the way over to Charleston, South Carolina. We had 2 IT people handling all those systems across that amount of space, time, space. There should be an analysis of the workforce, and if it's the PR, you know, like Dank always said, well, you got all these people and they do all these short videos. Well, it's called community outreach, but you could scale it back, and you gotta know your workforce, and you can't just keep growing government to grow government. There has to be a necessity for it, and I'm open to examining all the departments, because from what I've seen, we are very top heavy in our government, in the city government, and we could do better. We don't need so many people sitting behind desks in City Hall. We need more people out on the streets working swells and, you know, stormwater management and all that stuff. I wouldn't hire somebody just to be hired. You know, I'm not into that. So you do have to be able to structure the government that's effective for the community. And if he's got some personal vendetta against the PR department, I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but if he's just focusing on that, so that's for him to answer. But I do, in the military, we call it troop to task, right? Troop to task. You got to know who's doing what and when, and why, where, and how. And if you got all these people working, you got one guy sitting there, well, what are you doing, bud? What's your job? Let's find a job for you.
Yeah, we definitely find jobs for them.
Yeah.
One other question I kind of want to talk on is we have a big influx of income or budget that goes to recreational. And I know that was possibly because of our dynamics or demographics, I want to say, before was mostly retirees that wanted that. And now as we grow where we have more younger people and we're focusing on other things, do you think we're going to spend so much of our budget? I think it's referenced as 46%. And one of the things, I'm not sure exactly, I just seen a number somewhere, I could be wrong, but there's a good portion that is spent on recreational and park and so forth.
Well, you have to take a balanced approach. Right now, when you're thinking about the city government, what's more important, building a new parks and rec facility or fixing our stormwater or our wastewater treatment facilities? It's called prioritization. You got to have your priorities. And they were talking about all this ecotourism a few years ago. They were talking, it's all ecotourism and parks and trails and stuff like that. Well, guess what? That's not a revenue generator. We don't charge people to walk on our trails. We don't charge people to ride their bikes, across the county on our trail system. We need those jobs that are going to provide livable income for people to be able to sustain themselves in this city. We have people leaving because they can't afford to live here, which is wrong. You have people that are native to Florida, Flagler County, that says, hey, I've got to get out of here. So we do need those facilities. The kids need sports fields that drain, that have proper drainage where they can play soccer or softball or baseball. And we have a water issue, and we need to take care of that. But I'm not, and it's going to grow. We're requiring developers to put parks and, amenities in as they build these mega developments. But I'm more focused on getting the infrastructure and jobs in here. We do have to take a balanced approach, but I'm not gonna forsake fixing a water treatment facility to build a field over here or whatever. You've got to have your priorities straight.
I agree with that. So what do you think about the road situation? A lot of people are starting to complain about traffic and congestion with some of our retail and commercial spaces being condensed in one spot.
Well, we've been having that discussion, and I've said it in the past. State Road 100 should be 6 lanes, 3 lanes each way, with turn lanes. And they're out there milling and resurfacing now in the middle of all those organizations opening up their facilities. It's spending money when you should be expanding the road. So we're milling and repaving out there when we should be widening and repaving, adding to that and Old Kings Road. And that goes back to the appropriations from the state. When you don't get $42 million in that ask for Old Kings Road, which Old Kings Road should be at least 4 lanes with turn lanes from top to bottom to take some of the burden off of State Road 100, off of 95, off of Palm Coast Parkway. Well, you've got to have the money for those things. And I've had other people agree with me. State Road 100 should be 6 lanes with turn lanes. And you see bad planning, and say that storage facility that's going out there by the Wawa. Have you noticed that when you're coming up, say you want to go to City Hall? Okay, well, they got the turn lane for the storage facility, but they had that gap of grass between the storage facility and the Wawa turn lane. Have you noticed that? Mm-hmm. So you can't get in that turn lane quicker to relieve some of that flow because they didn't extend that all the way down. That would have been when engineers are looking at that, they should say, well, wait a minute. We could probably relieve some traffic if they can get in that turn lane quicker and you're not backing up at that light there at Bulldog.
Probably would have been more cost effective to do it at the same time as well.
Well, either the developers that are developing the property, because it is frontage of their property, it's okay, this is what we're requiring you to do. Or at least the city get involved using DOT funds to fix that. Say, okay, this is something we can fix while they're putting that turn lane in, that runway. Let's go ahead and extend it on now. It's just, we got a lot of work to do.
What is your opinion on possible state funding in the future as we see some of the people that are more favorable, we'll say, to our county possibly transitioning out?
Oh, we are at the bottom of the totem pole. I may have mentioned it earlier. We wasted a once-in-a-generation chance by having the Speaker of the House from our county. So now Mr. Leak is moving over to the Senate if he's elected, and he was head of appropriations for the House. So hopefully that influence is going to carry over if he's elected senator. Now, I'm not telling anybody how to vote, but you would hope, Mr. Greco is going to, if he wins, he's going to be a rookie state representative, and it's all about power and influence up there in Tallahassee. What kind of swag do you have to be able to pull those appropriations? But I've had conversations with Mr. Leak, and when I met him at the library during early voting, and I told him specifically, I said, David Alfin is not going to lose this election because of that pay raise. David Alfin is going to lose this election because of this last appropriations, where he got $79.8 million for that road out west instead of taking care of his infrastructure. And that panned out. I won the primary because it's resonating with people that, hey, people in government are not doing what they said they were going to do, and they're not taking care of their citizens. And we have to do that. Your whole job is to take care of the community and the residents here and make sure we get the money that we can to take care of our infrastructure. The state is at a surplus on money. But if you can't lobby, if we pay lobbyists for the city, if your lobbyist can't get it, or, heaven forbid we have something happen like this one, so well, that was their top priority. You got to prioritize, and they're saying that on the top of their list was that road out west. Well, I don't know if special interest got the better of it or somebody made a mistake, but you have to get the resources for your infrastructure. We can't keep growing without taking care of infrastructure. Here's an analogy for you. It does us no good to build an Olympic-sized swimming pool in a community, which we need, if we can't fill the Olympic-sized swimming pool because we don't have the available water to do it. Or we have to tell everybody, hey, don't use your faucet today. We're filling the pool. That's not reasonable. So we have to lobby. We have to have those people in government at the state that's going to fight for us and come down here and hear our needs. Same at the federal level. We should have Mike Waltz should be down here in the district asking people, what do we need? What do we need? What do you guys expect of me?
With respect to infrastructure expansion, there was that tragic accident that I think there was a young male on Matanzas. What would you say to sidewalk and streetlight expansion?
Which accident are you talking about? Are you talking about the one on Belterre yes. and Pine Grove? I talked to the sheriff about that one. The Highway Patrol is doing the investigation, but I think that was you can't speculate on the cause right now, but it was a tragic accident, but I don't think much could be done at that intersection. That would have, there's a sidewalk there. I think the kid was on the sidewalk, but a dump truck is a lot higher. And if you're in that blind spot, if the bike is not paying attention and the driver can't see them, it's tragic. But to your question, you were talking about lights and sidewalks, right?
Yes.
Some areas of the city we could put in sidewalks, but this is something everybody has to understand. This city was poorly designed. Nowhere else in Florida, and people will beat me up on this. Have you traveled around Florida? Have you ever saw any city that is like ours, that doesn't have sidewalks? They don't have sidewalks. They don't have sewer system where everything's enclosed. This city, and I think it was because they cheaped out, because they were like, okay, let's do this. And it was poorly designed, and we have to live with what we have. In places where we can put sidewalks, putting a sidewalk in where a swell was at, you're taking someone's property, on that easement, you're shortening their driveways, say Cimarron Drive. That was probably one of the main roads that we probably need a sidewalk. But, just the legalities of going through and trying to commandeer someone's property to put in a sidewalk, and then you have to put in the sewer system underneath it for the stormwater management. It's very costly. So that's why all the developments, when they're putting in the new developments, they're self-contained. They're putting in the sidewalks and all that stuff because that's what people want. Like the L section, we don't have any sidewalks up there other than on Lake View. So some of the traffic needs to be controlled in some areas. But
the R section doesn't have any sidewalks either.
Yeah, pretty much the whole city.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just poor design. And they can say, well, the swell replenishes the aquifer. Well, that don't mean anything to me when my yard is flooding because I have a swell that's not being maintained. I really don't care about the aquifer when there's 6 inches of water in my floor. I know nothing about civil engineering, and I'm noticing we haven't had rain in a couple of days. Why am I still seeing water piled up in the swells?
Yeah, what's going on with that?
The swell, the water has to evaporate, or it has to go down into the aquifer. It has to be absorbed by the land. And another thing is, like this house here out front. When I got out of the truck, I walked around to the pasture side. I'm looking at your grass. You have water plants growing in your grass. So you have a water problem out there. And part of it is the culverts. One of the main pushes we need to have is clearing those culverts. And I followed one of the vac trucks around the other day, and I actually stopped and talked to them for a little bit. It took those guys 4 minutes and 20 seconds to clear a culvert.
I mean, the drain running underneath, like the apron for
your driveway.
Okay,
that's your culvert. So part of our problem is a lot of the culverts are clogged.
Or just overgrown with grass. You can't even see them.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be, the property owner is supposed to maintain on 3 feet back from the culvert opening. Now, the problem is they don't do that. Some people don't have the resources to do it, or they just don't do it. But the city technically owns the culvert. You are supposed to maintain 3 feet on either side of it. But if it clogs up, that water backs up down the street. So my big push is going to be, we're going to hit it, like a strike force, clearing all the culverts. If we were to have like 2 or 3 of those trucks running, doing neighborhood a day, just on a continuous loop, clearing all those culverts, it's like cholesterol in your arteries.
Mm-hmm.
If the cholesterol builds up in your arteries, you're going to have a stroke or you're going to have a heart attack. We have to clear all those arteries. You got to keep the water flow going. It's all about, you got to get all that water to those main drainage canals. But it's like my old street, our street backed up because the culverts were not maintained. I could maintain mine all day, but if my neighbor doesn't maintain hers, it's completely overgrown, that water's going to back up down the street. So,
okay. If you do become mayor, or when you become mayor, whichever you want to look at it, what would be your intended legacy that you want to leave behind?
I've answered this before. Let me think about it.
I'll get some coffee while you do.
Being a conservative leader that fixes a lot of issues in the city and puts us on a glide path forward. We have to fix our infrastructure. That's my platform, is revitalize existing infrastructure. attract industrial growth and employment opportunities, increase public safety and security, smart growth and expansion of our city's boundaries, and empowering the commercial development of town center. And number one on the list is infrastructure. Number two is jobs and industry. That's it. We had those are the top two priorities on my platform. And if I can achieve those, if us as a city, if we can get our infrastructure up to standard and lean forward into new facilities, which we need to do, and we get some industries in here that's going to diversify our tax base and take some of that burden off of us as individual homeowners, I would feel that that would be my success and my legacy for the city.
If you do get in, we see that there's an ongoing problem that we've had for many years now with the city manager and finding the right city manager. I don't know if that's going to be resolved before you get in or after, but what is your opinion on that, and how would you address that issue?
The current council, and I'm thankful for this, the current council has left the hiring of the new city manager to the incoming council. And I'm assuming they're already receiving resumes. Well, maybe not. They piggybacked on a contract down, I think, in New Smyrna Beach. So they're going to be getting all those resumes that are going along with that contract. So we need to hire someone for me personally, I'm looking for an external hire, someone that's not from this county and beholden to the politicians and the developers. I'm looking for someone with educational and background experience of a city of our size, specifically someone with at least a master's degree, and someone that's proactive and that can get things done, that knows how to network with industry and that has done some economic development in the past and can pull on those resources, that has enough swag to say, hey, I'm down here in Palm Coast now, and this is what the city has to offer you. How about you come down here? Let's have a discussion. So the main thing is someone that's not beholden to anybody in this county. And I think I told them at the forum the other night, really, me running as mayor I'm kind of like an external hire. I've lived here for 18 years, but I've not been involved in all these groups that have, in my opinion, have exploited the city for their own personal gains. I've just been a working stiff, taking care of my family, established 2 small businesses, and minding my business. So now my business is going to be the city, and taking care and doing what we're supposed to do. But hopefully we can get someone that has the vision and the capability of managing our city for years to come. I don't want us to go through that again. 3 city managers back to back with no longevity. The salary is right. I know a couple of people that I would love to get in here. My cousin's husband, Melissa, her husband, Bo, he's a retired colonel. He's the assistant city manager of Virginia Beach up in Virginia. I would love to have him here because he has some of the same background as me. And I'm also looking for possibly somebody with some military background, because the military builds and develops leaders.
Problem solvers, too.
And know how to manage people and resources very well. And that would be an added benefit. They don't necessarily have to have that military experience, but I would prefer, because you were in the military. There's skills and critical thinking skills and problem solving that most people don't get. Most people on the street don't get that kind of experience, and in just a stressful environment. So hopefully we can get somebody with all those attributes. I already asked the city when they start getting those resumes in to send them to me, because my team can vet. We know how to vet people. I could vet you in 10 minutes. I can guarantee it. We can pull all the information on you. So, and I have a lot of very smart people on my campaign, a lot of educated people, researchers. I have one guy that's a physicist that works on my campaign with me. Not necessarily physicists or all that, but I have very diligent people doing research and
Competent.
yeah, they know what they're doing, and I can't bring them into government with me, and I wouldn't do that because we have enough nepotism and cronyism and all those things in our city government, and I'm trying to get rid of that. Same thing with the grift in the city. You know, there's a lot of grift going on in this city, and that's why I won't be associated with any, you know, outside organizations. Really, when they hire me as mayor, they're hiring a full-time mayor because I'm retired military. I don't need the money. I've actually pledged $10,000 of the mayor's salary to charities annually, $5,000 towards a scholarship and $5,000 towards a food pantry. So me and my wife are comfortable. We love it here. This is our city. We just want to make it better. That's it.
I respect that. I mean, there's not very many people that are willing to do that. I know that myself, I can't do that. That would affect some of my income stream if I did do something of that sort. And also, I am disabled, so I have a TBI. I'm not the most, what do you call a qualified person for that job, we'll say. I forget things. But I appreciate you coming on. I looked forward to meeting you and get to know you.
We're taking too much of your time, not for ours.
Wrap it up. Wrap it up.
We're going to wrap it up right now.
Oh.
All right. We want to thank Mike Norris for coming on. Once again, we will go ahead and talk to the other representative of the area that's running for the mayoral candidate, and we will go ahead and do that at a later time. We hope that you liked this episode. We hope that you got to know Mike Norris a lot better, and that you go ahead and decide whether he's the right candidate for you. With that, we want to thank him for coming on, and we hope that he does well in his race.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Please like and subscribe and watch our future content. Thank you so much.
NorrisForMayor.com.
Oh,
My
we didn't
bad.
get to that.
Once we give you a go ahead and do a sound bite for yourself there. Go ahead and sound out.
NorrisForMayor.com. That's it. You can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor. We're everywhere.
I'm sorry about that.
No
Thank
worries.
you for coming.